Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Let's begin. We were on chapter 4. We did chapter 4a, and the title is How Does a Sorcerer Bring About a Genie? And we have seen in 4a, just a quick review, we have seen different forms of Al-Iqsam, the sorcerer swearing by chief of demons, slaughtering, and Suflia, extreme sense of disbelief and paganism. Najasa, writing verses of the Quran with the filth, whether it's a najasa of the blood of period and so on and so forth, and also at-tankis, and grammatizing the words of the Quran and writing them in the backward. And also we have seen at-tanjim, the sahir's communication with certain star, and also al-kefu, drawing a square around the left hand of a young child. And we spoke about it, young child, almost about a puberty, or puberty has been done, whether male or female, doesn't matter. And athar, traces of smell of sweating in the garments, and they usually people they steal the garments and they start doing those. And agreement between a sorcerer and a demon, that we covered in the last chapter. And also we have seen how does a sorcerer bring about a genie. So today we're going to continue from the second method. The first method was, I'm going to do the bullet points. So in the previous session we did, how does a sorcerer bring about genie? Various way of bringing about a genie, and requires the use of language in a polytheist way. And they formally pretends to be Iman, but they are not. Actually, it all depends on the paganism. And the first method, the al-iqsam, swearing by and seeking refuge in the master of devils. That's the thing they use. And also, sorcerer enters a dark room, lights a fire and smoke incense of a good or bad odor. And I have explained to you, and good for the love and bad for the hatred. And then we covered this method shows that genie prefer dark rooms. The genii are fed on incense upon which the name of Allah is not pronounced. Mark it down, that thing. The apparent and the explicit act of polytheism in this method lies in swearing by and seeking refuge in the jinn. So today chapter in 4b, we're going to cover the second method of slaughtering. Excuse me. The sorcerer brings a bird, a chicken, or a pigeon, or an animal with certain specification according to the genie request. Usually the animal is black. Jinn prefer black things. So here, mark it down, they usually prefer black things. Afterwards, he slaughter the animal without initiating the slaughter with Allah's name. They don't do with Allah's name, without Allah's name. Sometimes he stains the sufferer with its blood, and sometimes he does not. Then he throws the carcass in the derelict location, like into a well or in a deserted place, which are usually the homes of jinn, without mentioning the name of Allah. He then returns home, recites his incantation, and command the genie to do what he wishes. So here in this second method, usually they slaughter. What they slaughter? Chicken, pigeon, any animal. But what they prefer? Black color, because genie like black color, and they slaughter it other than Allah's name. They don't mention Allah's name. Why? They want to make happy to the genie and the demons, and they do it in the isolated place, very far from home, because those are the places those are the homes of genie. And it can be isolated, deserted place, or into a well. Two acts of polytheism may be inferred from this method: presenting a sacrifice, slaughtering to jinn. So in this is forbidden, according to predecessor and successor among scholars, because it is a sacrifice that is not presented to Allah. Therefore, a Muslim person must not eat from such sacrifice. If somebody did sacrifice other than Allah's name, even for the Ghair Allah, I'm talking about that, you are not supposed to eat. Because what are the four things mentioned in the Quran? If they do it on Ghair Allah, we can't. That is haram for us. So here, a Muslim person must not eat from such sacrifice, and let alone do it. Despite all that, ignorant people commit such acts at all times and places. Yahya ibn Yahya reported, Wahab said to me, one Khalifa acquired a spring. Then, in order that the jinn do not drain its water, he slaughtered an animal for the jinn and invited people to eat from it. When Ibn Sihab az-Zuhri heard the news, he said, the Khalifa's slaughter is unlawful, and what the people ate was unlawful for them. Prophet ﷺ forbade eating from an animal slaughtering for jinn. Underline this. This is the thing, Rasulullah ﷺ forbade eating from an animal slaughtered for the jinn. And it is reported in Sahih Muslim that Ali ibn Talib said, Prophet ﷺ said, Allah curses he who slaughters a sacrifice to other than Allah. Let me repeat again. Prophet ﷺ said, Allah curse he who slaughters a sacrifice to other than Allah for Ghair Allah. It can be Jinni or any other shrine or any other person. That is Ghair Allah. The second is the incantation which a sorcerer uses in order to bring about the jinn. Contains a language of explicit polytheism. As Ibn Taymiyyah pointed out in more than one instance in his works, in second method we learn that the incantation which sorcerer use in order to bring about jinn contains a language of explicit polytheism. Ibn Taymiyyah pointed out in more than one instance of his work. So here in this book, we know how they are doing the wrong things. But we have to cure with ruqya, with Quran and Sunnah. And the third method is as-sufliya, extreme sense of disbelief and paganism. This is well-known method. The method third one is sufliya. And this is extreme sense of paganism and disbelief. This is well-known method among the sorcerer who adopt it. Its practitioner has a large group of demons and they work for him, obeying his commands because compared to other sorcerers, his disbelief and paganism are most extreme, filthy way. This method may be summarized. The sorcerer wears the Quran on his feet like a pair of shoes and goes into the toilet to recite his incantation. Astaghfirullah. May Allah save us all from such kind of disbelief. Astaghfirullah. The sorcerer wears the Quran on his feet like a pair of shoes and goes into the toilet to recite the incantation. He then leaves the toilet and goes into a room to order the genie to do whatever he dictates. In response, the genie rushes to execute his order because of his strong disbelief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In order to be classified as sufli, a sorcerer is required to have committed serious sin, that to be like a kabira sin, other than what was mentioned, such as incest, homosexuality, fornication, ridiculing religion in order to please shaitan. So usually they do something hidden and something they do publicly. And what is hidden? Like wearing the Quran as a footwear and going to the toilet. Nobody is seeing them because it's between them and Allah will punish in this world and the hereafter. That is the kalam of Allah. They are disrespecting the doors more disrespecting manner. And the other thing, they do these things like, they look for somebody to do the homosexual, incest or fornication. and they deliberately do it, wantedly, and ridiculing religion. And sometimes, they argue and they start and they do in such a manner you could feel that. But you are not supposed to, start criticizing and being judgmental about the people. Oh, he is or she is, practicing sorcery. Allah alam, Allah knows best what they are doing. So they do this in order to please the shaitan. And the fourth method is an-najas, writing Quran with the filth. The sorcerer writes the ayahs of the Quran, verses of the Quran with the menses discharge or other filthy fluids, then recite his polytheistic incantation. As a result, Jinni appears. And then sorcerer instructs him to obey his orders. There is no gainsaying to explicit disbelief in this the method because ridiculing a chapter or even a verse of the Quran is a form of disbelief. It's a kufr. You can't disbelieve even in a word. They let alone writing it with filth. And this also, this work, they do it secretly and in appearance, you can't even identify them because they look okay. Like, how the hypocrite signs are the same way those who practice sorcery, you can't make out. Apparently, they portray as if they are very sincere believer, but they are not. They do such things at the night or hidden from the family, hidden from the people, and sometimes their immediate family also involved in that. Because as I mentioned in the starting, they do it from generations to generation. It's like, getting used to that. It's like an addiction to them because they are getting that power from other than Allah and they think it's okay to do that. And they are far from the Sirat Mustaqim. They're completely misguided. So here the fifth method is at-tankis, the engrammatizing words of the Quran. In the backward way they will be writing it. Sorcerer rewrites the word of one of the chapter of the Quran backward while reciting his incantation. Genie appears and the sorcerer orders him to do what he wants. Clearly, this is a forbidden act as it contains act of polytheism and disbelief. So remember, we can't do this. You can't recite from backward instead of from starting from start like in Qulu Allahu Ad, Allahu Samad, Lam Yalid, Walam Yulad, Walam Yakullahu Kufuwan Ahad. But you start from Kufuwan Ahad and you go in the starting, you can't do that. They do in the backward manner. We are not supposed to do that. And that is the act of polytheism. And the sixth method is a tanjim, communicating with a certain star. The method is also known as a rasd, derived from the verb tarsada, to observe. The sorcerer waits and observes the sky until a specific star emerges, then talks to it using enchanting language and another incantation that contains word of polytheism and disbelief, which only Allah knows of it. He then performs some movement which he claims make the spirit of the star descend, but this is in fact an act of worshipping that star instead of worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The sorcerer may not be aware of this action, but this is an act of worshipping and extolling other than Allah. They are looking the sky and they are waiting for a particular star and they call with enchantation polytheism way and they started worshipping. As a result of this worship, the demon execute his orders because they are making happy to the demons. They are doing all the things which are forbidden in Islam. So the sorcerer believes it is the star which helps him. Astaghfirullah. Yet the star which is falsely accused is not even aware of what is happening. Do you understand? Like Allah knows everything. He's Rabbul Alamin, but they are thinking like the star knows. Astaghfirullah. The sorcerer claimed that this type of black magic cannot be resolved unless the star reappears. Some people they say they have the knowledge of stars and they know which star to come when and when is good time, when is bad time, all those things. Okay, they are false things. There is no such thing in Islam. So there are stars which appear only once a year. So they wait and observe until it reappears it and recite incantation in which they seek refuge in the star to resolve their black magic. The act of disbelief lies in praising and seeking refuge in other than Allah, not to mention the incantation which contains word of disbelief. This is the method they do in the sixth method. But when we talk about seventh method, that is called al-kefu, drawing a square around the left hand of young child. This kafu, and many people, they draw the squares and everything, and they say they are curing, and many people they keep in the living area, in the living room. They, literally keep openly. They think because of that they are cured. It's not so. You should have correct knowledge of Quran and Sunnah. The sorcerer brings a young child who has not yet reached puberty. I mentioned you in the previous chapter. They look for the child, he or she, they're about to reach puberty, but they didn't reach it. Okay? Then he takes his left hand and draws a square around it. The sorcerer writes incantation which contains words of polytheism around the four corners of the square. Afterward, he puts oil and blue rose or oil and blue ink. Notice that they blue rose or blue ink in the hand of the child, which is in the square. He then writes other incantation in single word or a rectangular piece of paper. Then he puts the piece of paper over the face of the child as a shade or cover over the child. Okay, putting a cap on so that it remains firm, and now putting the cap on it. He then covers the child completely with the thick garment. At this time the child look at his hand but obviously cannot see the sorcerer. As he is in darkness, the sorcerer begins reciting an incantation which contains words of extreme disbelief. As a result, the child feels as if the darkness has turned into light and sees the moving image in his hand. So he will ask, "What do you see?" The sorcerer would ask the child. The child would answer, "I see the picture of a man." Who is answering? The child. They are doing in such a manner. Now the child is saying, "Oh, I see a picture of a man." The sorcerer would ask, "Tell him." The sorcerer says, "So and so." Then the image starts moving according to his order. This method is mostly used in looking for lost things. Some people they say, "Oh, I have power, I can find out." And many Muslims, believe me, they go to such kind of people. They are purely magicians, and they do sorcery. And innocent Muslims they don't know, and they go and they find out the lost thing. But this is haram. This is forbidden in Islam. Again, there is no gainsaying the act of polytheism and disbelief and all the strange incantation involved in that. So, in the method 7, what are they doing? They are looking for a young child, not reach puberty, boy or a girl, doesn't matter, and writing incantation uh, contains words of polytheism around the four corners of the square. And after that, he puts oil and the corners of the square they make blue rose or oil and blue ink in the hand of the child. And after that, they cover the child completely with the garment and they put the cap on the child. And after that, that blue thingy, that blue rose, it starts as if it starts moving and light appears. And whatever the sorcerer wants, he or she will be informing that child. And in this, they look for the lost thing. Somebody lose something and they are doing that because they are taking help other than Allah. Genie, demons, that's the false practices. That is haram and forbidden in Islam. The eighth method, al-athar, traces of smell of sweat in the garments. So here, the sorcerer would ask the patient to bring a garment that has traces of smell of his or her sweat. What do you mean by traces of smell? Like, when you touch something, you have that, touching of your skin over that. It doesn't mean literally you sweat and give. Many people will say, "Oh, I don't sweat." It happens. Many people they don't sweat because they are always in a good temperature. They are maintaining the temperature, whether it's heating or cooling. They don't sweat much. So here the thing is such as, handkerchief, turban or shirt, whatever the thing you are using it, you are touching that. The garment is, the handkerchief, he would knot the handkerchief so that it measures the thickness of 4 fingers. He would hold it firmly and recite Suratul Takasur, Surah number 102, and any other short surah of the Quran in a loud voice, very loud voice. So here, have you noticed? They are pretending to be Muslim, but they are not. They are, you know, doing false practices, but they are pretending that way. So here, somebody has to bring the used garment to whom they want to do the magic. And now with the hanky, they are measuring the thickness of 4 fingers and reciting Surah Al-Takasur. Then he would recite an incantation silently. See, they are reciting surah loudly, and people are thinking, oh, he's a Muslim and he is doing a good thing, he is doing with the Quran and Sunnah, and you get lost in that and you get carried away. No, no, he's a good person, he's a good Baba, he's a good saint. No, he's not. He's reciting incantation silently and call the genie, saying, if this is patient illness has been caused by genie, then shorten this garment. Now he is ordering the genie, if this is caused by the illness of genie, then shorten the garment. If the patient illness has been caused by the evil eye, then the length it. If the patient illness has been caused naturally, then the leave the length of the garment as it is. So depending on the circumstances, it will shorten or longer. Let me repeat this if you didn't understand this, because many people they do false practices and you get carried away, because we all have to die and we are answerable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We can't do false practices and we have to live an alert life. We have to be vigilant about this thing. They call genie, saying, if this patient illness has been caused by a genie, then thus shorten this garment. Okay, shorten this garment. If patient illness has been caused by the evil eye, the lengthen it. Means increase the length in it. Okay. If the patient's illness has been caused naturally, then leave the length of the garment as it is. If nothing caused it, then it will be the same length. Okay, I hope you understand. The sorcerer would remeasure the handkerchief. If it exceeds 4 fingers, he would say to the patient, you suffer from the effect of a jealous eye. If it is less, he would say to the patient, you suffer from the effect of jinn. If the size of the garment is still 4 fingers, he would say to the patient, there is nothing wrong with you, go and see a doctor. You understand these 3 things they do. And all the thing, have you noticed, they are doing false practices. Even though they are reciting surah of the Quran, but they just want to, forge the people. They are doing false practices. So we have to be careful regarding this manner. So they will ask the third thing, okay, there's nothing wrong. First they will say suffer from the effect of jealous eye. If it is less, If would to say the patient you suffer from the effect of jinn, if the size of the garment is still 4 fingers, he would say to the patient there is nothing wrong with you and go and see the doctor. The sorcerer confused the patient. He recites verses of the Quran loudly in order to make the patient believe that he is being treated with Quran. This is not the case, for the secret lies in the incantation which he recites silently. The sorcerer seeks the assistance of jinn, and appealing to them is an act of polytheism. The jinn tell lies. Who knows whether this jinn was telling the truth or was lying? The work of some sorcerer has been tested, and it was proven that sometimes they were telling the truth, but most of the time they were lying. For instance, a patient said to a sorcerer, told him her that he or she suffered from the effect of evil eye. When recited some verses of the Quran for the patient, a genie spoke through the patient, reveals that the patient did not suffer from evil eye. Such as these are the common as well as other methods. When they start reciting those things, genie appears and they can lie. Most of the time they lie, sometimes they say truth. Distinctive feature of a sorcerer work. If you find one of the following characteristic in a person who treats people under spell or other related illness, then this person is definitely a sorcerer. We have seen n number of things before, like all the things one has to use your mind when you are going somewhere, because I know if somebody is bewitched or somebody has nazre bad or evil eye or something, you get carried away and you have stress and you go to some people and they mistreat you in sense they do false practices and you think it's okay to do because they are reciting Quran, and you end up with false things. So you have to notice that he asked the patient his and her mother's name. When somebody is asking this, it means it's a gray area. Something is wrong. So this distinctive features, please note down. All online students as well as everyone on YouTube and Facebook or Twitter, everywhere, whoever is listening, these are the signs. Listen it carefully. He asked the patient his and her mother's name. He takes a sweaty garment from the patient, a piece of cloth, cap, handkerchief, flannel, anything. And third thing, he sometimes asks for an animal with certain specification in order to slaughter it without taking Allah's name. He slaughter. And he may use that sacrificial blood to stain some painful area of the patient or throw the carcass on a ruined site. They throw the carcass on a ruined site. Sometimes, people they complain they have carcass in their home because somebody do that and they throw and they are gone. You don't know who they are. But these days we have cameras everywhere, especially outside the home. But still, if we watch in the camera, we can't make out who did it. They do it so secretly because they know camera is there, so they do in such a manner. First of all, they cover themselves so much we can't even see who they are. So it happened with many people and they were unable to recognize them. And he writes incantations. He recites unclear incantation, like when they recite Quran you can't make out which surah and what, and they are unclear in that. He gives the patient a hijab incantation written on a piece of paper which contains squares with which letters or figures are written. He say, oh, this is a hijab. You can wear it. You can put on your, head, which contains a square, which contains a letters or figures. Note down that. And the seventh thing, he instructs the patient to isolate himself or herself. He says, not to meet anyone, be in a dark room, not to talk to the people, and for a specific period of time. The common people call it al-hijba, act of remaining indoors for a long time. And eighth thing is he sometimes instruct patient not to touch water for a specific time, usually 40 days. This indicates that this particular genie work for the sorcerer is a Christian. They say, oh, no, no, you don't have to do salah, you don't touch water, you don't take shower and be in a filthy manner. And how filthy you can, they instruct you that way. So those are false practices. And ninth thing, he gives patients some items to bury in the ground. They give something, go and bury in the ground, put in the ground. And tenth thing, he gives the patient some pieces of paper to burn and use incense for his or her body. He gives something to burn. And 11th thing, he murmurs unclear words. He started murmuring something which you can't make out what they are saying. Many times it happens, when you go somewhere and people, what they are reciting, you are not sure of it. You get confused whether it's a surah, ayah, or something else. And the whole time you are confused. He sometimes informs the patient of his name, his town, and the purpose of visit. They inform you patient's name and visit and everything. How come they know? Because every person has a qareen, and our qareen and their qareen, they talk to each other, and that genie inform them, and that's how they know. Nobody has ilm ghaib. Nobody. That's how. Inshallah, in further chapters, we'll see that. That time you can ask the questions. He writes broken letters on a piece of paper, hijab, or on a white porcelain plate, and instruct the patient to dissolve writing in water and then drinks it. And they do all this and they ask to dissolve it and drink it. If you discover that this man is a sorcerer, do not go to him, please. Do tawbah, sincere tawbah, ask Allah's forgiveness, and never ever go to that person. Whether it's a male or a female, even females, most of the sorcery, male or female, doesn't matter, both are practicing. It can be young, old, any generation, because they are practicing from generation to generation. Like, animal, when he hunts, he has that habit of hunting it. These also a habit like hunting the people, and they are astraying the people, innocent people. They want the people to go to hellfire because they don't want to go alone. So here you are the person whom Prophet ﷺ described the hadith. Whoever goes to a soothsayer and believes what he says has disbelieved in Prophet ﷺ. So never ever goes to soothsayer or believes what he says. So we have to be clear what he or she is doing. So today chapter, what we did 4b, but I quickly review 4a also. So we covered in chapter 4 how does a sorcerer bring about a genie, and we have seen al-iqsam, slaughtering, sufla, najas, tankis, tanjib, kafu, athar, different methods they do it. We are doing this book to stop false practices, to have the knowledge of Quran and Sunnah, so that we reject it completely, because this chapter ends with the hadith. Whoever believes soothsayer and believes what he says has disbelieved the messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Let's end here. Jazakallah khairan kasira. If you have question, just let me know. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa